The night was quiet in the city, but inside a small orphanage at the corner of a forgotten street, there was restlessness. Children with bright eyes and wounded hearts waited for something different, something that would remind them that life still held kindness. The caretakers had whispered that a guest was coming, but they did not reveal who. The door opened slowly and the air shifted. Keanu Reeves stepped inside, not as a star, not as a man admired across the world, but simply as a human being carrying humility in his smile. He looked at the children, some shy, some curious, and sat down on the old wooden floor as if he belonged there. There was no stage, no cameras flashing, only quiet breaths waiting to see what he would do. Keanu's voice was soft, steady, filled with patience. He said, "I came to play with you." Those words, so simple, struck like lightning in their hearts. The children glanced at each other. They had dreamed of many things, but never that a man known across the world would choose to sit with them on a cold evening just to play. At first, silence ruled the room. One little boy clutched a worn-out deck of cards, afraid to hand it over. Another girl held dice from an old board game with missing pieces. Keanu reached out his hand gently, asking for nothing, only offering presents. The boy hesitated, then placed the cards into his palm. Keanu smiled and shuffled them awkwardly, making a funny mistake on purpose, so the children laughed. The ice broke. Within minutes, the orphanage echoed with laughter, claps, and voices shouting rules of games that had no real winner. Keanu played as if he had been waiting for this moment his whole life. He lost rounds on purpose, then celebrated as if losing was victory itself. Each child felt seen, each laugh became louder, and the air filled with a kind of light that no electricity could give. But in the middle of this warmth, there was a shadow. A boy sat in the corner, silent, his arms folded tightly. His name was Aaron. He had been in the orphanage the longest. Pain had carved lines into his young face. He had lost trust in people long ago and believed no one stayed, no one truly cared. As the games went on, his eyes stayed on the floor, never meeting Keanu's. Keanu noticed. He excused himself from the table where children cheered over dice and walked quietly toward the boy. He did not speak right away. Instead, he sat on the floor beside him. No spotlight, no attention, just silence shared. After a long pause, Keanu whispered, "You don't have to play. You can just sit with me if that feels better." The boy did not answer, but something in him shifted. No one had offered him the choice before. No one had respected his silence. Keanu did not push. He stayed there, still watching the others play, his presence calm and steady. Suddenly, one of the younger girls shouted, "Keanu, you forgot your turn." The room laughed. Keanu looked at Aaron and smiled. "Will you take my turn for me?" The boy hesitated, looked at the dice in the girl's hand, and slowly reached out. He rolled them across the floor. When the dice stopped, the children clapped and cheered as if he had done something extraordinary. For the first time in months, Aaron smiled. Just a little, but enough to shake the walls of his silence. The caretakers watched in tears. They had tried for years to bring light into Aaron's heart, but it was the quiet patience of a man who carried both fame and humility that cracked the door open. As the night went on, Keanu kept losing games, kept laughing the loudest, kept celebrating every child's small win. The orphanage became more than a shelter. It became a home filled with laughter and belonging, even if only for one evening. Yet, under this joy, tension built quietly. One of the caretakers knew that tomorrow the orphanage would face a painful decision. Funds were running out. Soon, the building might close, and the children would be scattered into uncertain futures. No one dared to say it that night, not when the room was finally filled with happiness. But the question lingered. Would this moment of light be enough to survive the storm waiting outside the door? The night ended with children hugging Keanu as if they would never let go. He promised nothing, he gave no speeches, but his eyes told them the truth. He cared. And sometimes that was more powerful than any gift. Still, as Keanu walked out into the cold night air, he felt the weight of something bigger. This was not just about a game night. It was about broken hearts, fragile hope, and a silent call for help that no one else seemed to hear. The story was only beginning, and what lay ahead would test not only his kindness, but also his strength to fight for those who had nothing. The morning after the game night, the orphanage felt strangely quiet. The echoes of laughter still lingered in the hallways, but so did the fear of reality creeping back. The children whispered about the man who had sat with them, who had laughed and played like he was one of them. For some, it felt like a dream, too good to be true. They wondered if he would ever come back, or if he was already gone like so many others before. Keanu Reeves, meanwhile, sat in his hotel room staring at the ceiling. Sleep had not come easily. Every face of those children replayed in his mind, especially the shy smile of the boy Aaron, who had rolled the dice with trembling hands. That small gesture had shaken him deeply. He had been around the world, seen wealth and loss, fame and silence, but the look in that boy's eyes cut through everything. It was not just sadness, it was a question, a silent question that asked, "Will you leave too?" As Keanu poured himself a cup of coffee, his phone buzzed with notifications, offers for interviews, invitations to glamorous events, projects waiting for his decision. But none of it mattered that morning. Instead, he pulled out a small piece of paper where he had written the orphanage's name. He decided he would go back, not as an actor making headlines, but as a man searching for truth. Back at the orphanage, the caretakers gathered around an old table. The director of the home, Sister Margaret, held a letter in her hand. Her face was pale. She read it slowly. The orphanage funding would end within 3 months. Without urgent help, the children would be relocated, separated from each other, and placed into foster systems already overflowing. The staff fell into silence. They had always feared this day. Before anyone could speak, the door creaked. Keanu stepped inside again, his simple black jacket the same as last night, his expression calm but serious. The caretakers stood frozen. They never expected him to return so soon. He smiled gently and said, "I didn't sleep much. I thought maybe the kids would like another game." But Sister Margaret couldn't hide the truth. She placed the letter on the table. Keanu picked it up and read every word. His face tightened. He looked around at the small rooms, the peeling paint, the old toys stacked in corners. Then he looked out the window, where children chased each other barefoot in the yard, holding on to happiness even when the world gave them so little. Instead of making promises, he walked outside to the yard. The children rushed to him, pulling his hands, shouting for him to play again. But his eyes searched for one face, Aaron. The boy stood near the fence, watching carefully. Keanu walked over and asked softly, "Will you play with me this time? Not just for me, but with me?" The boy looked uncertain, but something about the way Keanu spoke made him nod. They sat cross-legged on the grass with a board game between them. The other kids gathered close, forming a circle. Every roll of the dice was cheered. Every small move became an event. Yet under all this laughter, Keanu's mind raced. How could he protect this fragile happiness from being torn apart? As the sun began to set, a storm of emotions rose inside him. He excused himself from the children and went back to Sister Margaret. His voice was quiet but firm. "Tell me the truth. What will happen to them if this place closes?" Sister Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She explained the harsh reality. The children would be scattered. Some might end up in safe homes, but many would not. Bonds built here would break. The only family they knew would be gone. Keanu leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. He remembered his own losses, his own nights of silence when no one was there to hold him. That memory connected him with these children more than words ever could. Then an idea sparked. Not a simple one, not easy, but powerful. What if this story, their story, could be shown to the world? What if the same people who admired him for his films could see the truth of these children's lives? Maybe hearts would open, maybe help would come. But he also knew exposing them would not be simple. The world could be cruel, and the children's dignity had to be protected. It was not about pity. It was about respect. The next evening, Keanu returned again, this time carrying more than games. He brought books, small gifts, and food. He sat with the children, listening to their stories, not interrupting, not judging. Each child shared pieces of pain and hope. One girl spoke of wanting to be a teacher. Another dreamed of painting. Aaron, when finally asked, whispered, "I just want a place where people don't leave." Those words pierced Keanu's heart. He nodded slowly and answered, "Then maybe we'll have to fight to keep this place alive." The caretakers looked at him, unsure if he was serious. But in his voice, they felt something unshakable. It wasn't the voice of an actor making a kind gesture. It was the voice of a man ready to stand against a storm. And so, while the children laughed over one more game, unaware of the danger waiting to steal their home, Keanu Reeves made a silent promise to himself. He would not let this orphanage disappear without a fight. Yet he had no idea how difficult that fight would become, or how many unexpected twists lay ahead. People would question his motives, obstacles would rise, and even the children themselves would face moments that tested their trust. But for now, as night fell, laughter once again filled the halls. The children felt safe for one more day, and Keanu sat among them, carrying the weight of tomorrow in his heart. The days passed quietly, but inside Keanu's heart, the fire grew stronger. He had not told the children yet about the letter that threatened their home. He could not bring himself to shatter the fragile joy they carried. Instead, he spent each evening at the orphanage, blending into their world. He read them stories, played endless games, and sat with them during meals as if he had always been part of their family. But one evening, as the children laughed over a game of charades, Sister Margaret pulled him aside. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "They need more than moments, Keanu. They need a future." Her words echoed like a challenge. Keanu knew she was right. Kindness alone was not enough to keep walls standing or meals on plates. He needed a plan. Something bold, something that would not only raise funds but also open hearts across the world. That night, Keanu returned to his hotel room and stared at the city skyline. His reflection on the glass reminded him of his past, his own nights of loneliness, the grief of losing people he loved, the emptiness behind fame. He whispered to himself, "Maybe this is the reason I'm here. Maybe this is what all the pain was preparing me for." The next morning, he called an old friend, a director known for telling stories that moved the world. He explained everything, the children, the danger, the urgency. His friend listened in silence, then finally said, "If this is what you want, I'll help. But you know, once the cameras enter, it can't be undone. The world will see them." Keanu hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to turn the children into a spectacle, but he also knew their voices needed to be heard. He decided carefully the world would not see orphans to pity. They would see dreamers, fighters, and children with unbreakable spirits. Meanwhile, back at the orphanage, the children began to notice changes. Workers from the city had visited earlier that week, measuring walls, asking cold questions. Whispers of closing grew louder. Some of the younger ones clung to Keanu every time he came, afraid he might vanish. And Aaron, the boy who rarely spoke, grew restless again. One night, while others played, he asked bluntly, "Are you going to leave us too?" The question struck harder than any blow. Keanu crouched down and looked straight into his eyes. "No, I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "I don't have all the answers yet, but I promise I will fight for you." For the first time, Aaron's walls cracked. He nodded slowly, almost believing. Soon, Keanu began preparing the next step. He invited his director friend to visit quietly. They walked through the orphanage, met the children, and listened to their stories. The director was moved deeply, especially when one girl showed him her sketchbook filled with drawings of a world she imagined, houses with bright windows, families sitting together, laughter under trees. "This is what home means to me," she said softly. The director turned to Keanu and whispered, "Their voices are the story." "We won't need scripts. The truth will carry it." But even as hope grew, challenges appeared. Rumors spread quickly in the city. Some claimed Keanu was using the children for attention. Others questioned his motives, calling it a publicity stunt. Journalists began circling, hungry for headlines. The orphanage, once hidden, was now under watchful eyes. One evening, as Keanu arrived, he found a group of reporters waiting outside the gates. Microphones flashed, questions poured out. "Is this a new film project? Are you exploiting the orphans? What do you gain from this?" Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he walked past them and entered the orphanage. The children ran to him, and in that moment, he knew the truth didn't need to be shouted. It needed to be lived. Inside, the children sensed something was wrong. Their laughter was softer, their eyes searching his face for reassurance. Keanu gathered them in the hall and told them gently, People outside may not understand what we're doing here, but you and I know the truth. And the truth is that you matter. Your voices matter. Your dreams matter." The children listened in silence. Then one little boy raised his hand and asked, "Can we tell them our stories ourselves?" Keanu's heart swelled. This was it. Not just him speaking for them, but them speaking for themselves. That night, he shared the idea with Sister Margaret and the director. They would create a series of short films, not about tragedy, but about hope, resilience, and dreams. Each child would share something that defined them, a drawing, a song, a memory, or even just a laugh. But as they began planning, another problem arose. The letter had given them 3 months, but 2 weeks had already slipped by. Time was running out faster than they expected. Keanu knew the clock was ticking. He also knew that once the children's stories reached the world, the reaction could go either way. It could save the orphanage or it could backfire, exposing them to criticism and doubt. As he sat on the orphanage steps late that night, the children asleep inside, he whispered into the darkness, "Please let this work. Let them be seen for who they truly are." And somewhere deep inside, he felt the weight of destiny. He was no longer just an actor in this story. He was part of a fight that would test not only his strength, but the resilience of every child who called that orphanage home. The air in the orphanage grew heavier as the deadline crept closer. Every passing day felt like a clock striking louder in the hearts of the caretakers. The children, though still laughing and playing, had begun to notice the unease in the adults' voices. Whispers carried through the hallways. Questions floated at night. Even the youngest sensed something was wrong, though no one dared to tell them directly. Keanu sat with Sister Margaret late one evening, the dim light of a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls. She confessed, her voice breaking, "If we don't find a solution soon, the government will shut us down. They see only numbers, not faces. They don't understand that this place is more than walls. It is the only family these children have." Keanu listened carefully, his hands folded, his eyes heavy but determined. He had already spoken to his director friend, who was preparing cameras and a small crew. But the challenge was not just filming. It was about convincing the world to listen. He knew stories could touch hearts, but they would also attract doubt, criticism, and questions about motives. The next day, the crew arrived quietly. The children were nervous at first, unsure of the lenses pointing toward them. Some hid, others giggled, and a few stood proudly. Keanu knelt beside them, whispering, "This isn't about performing. It's about being yourselves. Let the world see who you really are." One by one, the children began to open up. A little girl named Lila stood holding her sketchbook, her hands trembling. She whispered, "I draw houses because I want a home that never disappears." Her voice cracked, but her drawings spoke volumes, bright colors, smiling families, sunlight pouring through windows. Another boy, Daniel, strummed an old guitar missing 2 strings. He played a shaky melody but smiled wide as he sang, "One day, we will not be alone." The crew wiped tears silently. Then came Aaron. He stood before the camera, stiff and silent, his eyes full of shadows. Everyone held their breath, afraid he might walk away. But Keanu stood behind the camera, nodding gently, his eyes steady on the boy. Finally, Aaron whispered, "I used to think no one ever stayed. But now, I think maybe someone will." Those words pierced the silence like a flame. The room erupted in quiet sobs, not from pity, but from recognition of a truth too deep to ignore. The director, moved beyond words, turned to Keanu. "This is powerful. If people hear this, they can't look away." But as they worked, trouble brewed outside. The reporters who had once circled returned with sharper questions. Headlines began appearing. "Keanu Reeves and the orphanage mystery. Is this charity or a publicity stunt?" Critics on television debated his intentions. Some praised him for caring, while others accused him of seeking attention. One evening, as Keanu left the orphanage gates, a man shoved a microphone in his face and shouted, "Is this your new movie role, Keanu? Are these children just your props?" Keanu froze, anger burning inside him, but he refused to lash out. Instead, he said quietly, "These children are not props. They are human beings. If you don't see that, maybe the story isn't for you. The clip went viral within hours. Millions shared it, some defending him, others mocking. But in the storm of noise, the children's videos slowly began to surface online. Short clips of Lila's drawings, Daniel's song, and Aaron's trembling words spread across social media. Comments poured in from strangers across the world. "I want to help. Where can we donate?" These kids deserve better. Hope flickered inside the orphanage for the first time. Donations began trickling in, small amounts from people who had little to give but hearts too big to stay silent. It wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. Inside the orphanage, the children huddled around an old laptop, watching their videos online. When they saw comments filled with love from people across oceans, they gasped. One girl whispered, "People know us now. We're not invisible anymore." But just as hope began to rise, a new letter arrived. Sister Margaret read it aloud, her hands shaking. The government had decided to move the closure date forward. Instead of 3 months, they now had only 6 weeks. The news hit like a storm. The children cried, some shouting in fear, others clinging to Keanu's arms as if he could hold the walls together by himself. Keanu felt his chest tighten, but he refused to let despair show on his face. He gathered them close and said firmly, "We are not giving up. Not now, not ever. If they want to close this place, they'll have to go through us." The children looked at him, their tears slowing, their eyes filling with a fragile kind of courage. For the first time, they felt not just protected, but empowered. That night, Keanu sat alone on the orphanage steps, staring into the dark sky. He knew this fight was no longer just about raising money. It was about challenging a system that saw children as files, not souls. It was about showing the world that kindness could not be silenced by rules and deadlines. He whispered into the silence, "I've faced storms before, but this one, I can't lose." Unseen by him, Aaron stood in the doorway, listening. For the first time, the boy believed fully Keanu was not leaving. And that belief was the spark that would carry them into the hardest battles ahead. The news that the orphanage had only 6 weeks left spread like wildfire. It shook the fragile hope that had just begun to grow inside the children. Whispers filled the hallways at night. Some children asked if they would be separated. Others clung tightly to their friends as if they might vanish overnight. Fear had returned, heavier than before. Keanu could feel the weight pressing on everyone. He spent his days inside the orphanage, refusing to let the children face their fears alone. But at night, when the lights went out, he sat with Sister Margaret, planning, thinking, searching for a path no one else could see. His director friend suggested something bold, host a live event, a global broadcast where the children could share their voices in real time. "The world loves you, Keanu," he said. "If you stand with them on that stage, millions will watch. Millions will listen. Donations could pour in overnight." Keanu hesitated. The thought of putting the children under a spotlight terrified him. What if they froze? What if critics twisted their words? But then he remembered Aaron's trembling voice when he said, "I think maybe someone will stay." That moment had already touched countless hearts online. Perhaps this was the way forward. The decision was made. Preparations began. Volunteers stepped in, offering lights, sound equipment, even transportation. A theater in the city was donated for one night. Its stage set not for actors, but for orphans who had waited their whole lives to be heard. The children practiced every day. Lila painted a giant mural as a backdrop, filled with colors of hope. Daniel tuned his broken guitar and learned to sing with more strength, though his hands still shook. Even the quiet ones found small roles, reading poems, sharing drawings, or simply standing together as proof that they mattered. But with every step forward, new shadows appeared. Tabloids printed headlines mocking the event, calling it a celebrity's desperate stunt. Powerful figures in the city questioned why so much attention was being given to one small orphanage when so many others struggled. Critics online spread doubt, saying, "It's all for publicity." The children saw some of these headlines and began to doubt themselves. One girl cried, "What if no one believes us?" Another whispered, "What if we fail and the orphanage still closes?" Keanu gathered them in the dining hall one evening. The tables were cleared, the air heavy. He looked into their frightened eyes and said, "Listen to me. People can say whatever they want. They can mock, they can doubt. But they cannot erase your truth. The truth is stronger than their noise. And when you step on that stage, you're not asking for pity. You're showing the world who you are. Brave, strong, unforgettable." His words lit a fire inside them. They nodded, wiped their tears, and promised to try. The night of the event arrived. The theater buzzed with energy. Outside, reporters gathered in crowds, their cameras flashing. Inside, thousands filled the seats while millions tuned in online. The children peeked nervously from behind the curtain. Keanu stood with them, not in front, but beside them, whispering, "This is your night. I'm just here to walk with you." The curtain rose. The stage glowed under soft golden lights. Silence filled the room, waiting. Then Lila stepped forward with her mural, her small hands clutching the edges. Her voice shook but did not break as she said, "This is my dream, a place where families don't disappear." The audience erupted in applause. Daniel followed, strumming his broken guitar, singing with a trembling voice that grew stronger with each note. People wiped tears in the audience. Across the world, comments flooded the live stream. "Beautiful, donating now. These kids are incredible." Child after child spoke, sang, and shared. Some cried halfway through, but Keanu stood near the edge of the stage, nodding gently, his presence steadying them. Finally, it was Aaron's turn. The boy who once hid in silence stepped into the light. The crowd held its breath. His voice was barely above a whisper at first. "I used to believe no one stayed. I used to think everyone leaves, but now I know some people keep their promises." He looked at Keanu, then at the audience. "Please don't let this place disappear. It's not just a building. It's our home." The theater fell into silence so deep it felt like time stopped. Then suddenly applause thundered through the hall. People stood to their feet, clapping, shouting, crying. The livestream comments exploded with hearts, words of love, and donation pledges. But behind the applause, Keanu noticed something else. At the very back of the theater, a group of suited officials whispered to one another, their expressions cold. He knew not everyone in power wanted this fight to succeed. Money, politics, and bureaucracy often outweighed compassion. Still, as the children bowed together at the end, hand in hand, the audience roared. Millions around the world had seen them. Millions had felt their truth. That night, donations surged beyond anything they had imagined. Messages poured in from strangers offering help, from families offering to sponsor, from schools sending support. Hope surged higher than ever before. Yet deep inside, Keanu felt a chill. The battle was far from over. Money could buy time, but it could not silence those who wanted the orphanage closed for reasons no one had fully explained yet. As the children slept that night, dreaming of a future brighter than they had ever dared, Keanu sat awake, staring at the stars. He knew the hardest storm was still ahead. The question wasn't just about saving a building anymore. It was about proving that kindness, resilience, and truth could stand against forces stronger than anyone expected. And in his heart, he whispered again, "I will not let them down, not now, not ever." The night after the event, the orphanage glowed with a hope it had never known before. The children sang themselves to sleep, clutching the dreams that felt closer than ever. Donations poured in. Letters arrived from around the world, and the small staff felt, for the first time in years, that survival was possible. But Keanu could not rest. He sat with Sister Margaret in her office, a small desk lamp lighting the room. She showed him another letter, this one far more troubling than before. Powerful land developers had already set their eyes on the property. They wanted the building demolished, the land sold. The pressure on the government to close the orphanage was not just about funds. It was about profit. Keanu leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. "So it's not just about money for the children," he whispered. "It's about greed," Sister Margaret nodded. "They see land. We see lives. They don't understand the difference." The fight had reached a new level. Donations could help feed the children, repair the building, even buy time, but they could not change the fact that powerful men wanted the land. Instead of despair, Keanu chose fire. He called for a meeting with city officials. When he walked into the hall, reporters swarmed outside. Cameras flashed. But inside, the mood was tense. Officials sat with cold eyes, papers stacked in front of them. They were prepared to dismiss him as just another actor. Keanu stood tall, his voice steady. These children are not a project. They are not numbers. They are not a piece of land. They are human beings who deserve stability, safety, and dignity. I've seen their faces. I've heard their voices. If you think I'll stand aside while you scatter them for profit, you're mistaken. An official sneered. And what will you do, Mr. Reeves? Play another role? Cry for the cameras? This is beyond you. But Keanu's reply cut the silence like a blade. This isn't a role. This is my life. And if you force these children out, the whole world will see the truth of what you've done. His words hit harder than anyone expected. The live stream of the meeting spread across social media. Thousands watched as he defended the orphanage. Hashtags trended worldwide. Voices rose louder than any official could silence. Still, the government refused to back down. They announced a final inspection date, claiming the building was unsafe. If the orphanage failed, it would be closed immediately. When the children heard the news, fear returned. Lila cried over her drawings, afraid she would never finish them. Daniel put down his guitar, too heartbroken to sing. Even Aaron fell silent again, his hope shaking. Keanu gathered them in the main hall. His voice was firm but gentle. Listen to me. They will try to scare us. They will try to take what is ours. But this place, this family, we fight for it together. No matter what happens, we don't give up. The day of the inspection arrived. Officials entered with clipboards and hard eyes. They pointed out cracks in the walls, old pipes, worn wood. The children stood nearby, nervous but united. And then, one by one, they stepped forward. Lila showed them her mural, bright and full of life. Daniel sang his song. Others read poems, displayed drawings, and spoke of their dreams. Finally, Aaron stepped forward, his voice strong for the first time. This is not just a building. This is where we learn to believe again. If you close it, you're not tearing down walls, you're tearing apart lives. Silence fell. Even the coldest official shifted uncomfortably. The children's truth was undeniable. Cameras captured every moment. Millions watched live across the world. In the end, the pressure was too much. The government had no choice but to back down. The orphanage was declared safe to remain open, with renovations funded by the overwhelming wave of donations pouring in. The developers withdrew, silenced by the storm of global outrage. That evening, the children gathered in the yard under the fading light. Laughter returned, brighter than ever before. Keanu sat among them, exhausted but at peace. Lila painted him into her mural, sitting with the children under the sun. Daniel sang louder than he ever had before. Aaron, once the quiet shadow, sat beside Keanu and whispered, "You stayed." Keanu smiled, his eyes misting. "I told you I would." The orphanage lived on, not just as a shelter, but as a symbol. Their story had touched millions, reminding the world that kindness is not weakness, that humility has power, and that even the smallest voices can move mountains when someone chooses to listen. For the children, the fight had changed everything. They no longer felt invisible. They no longer believed the world had forgotten them. And for Keanu, it was more than a victory. It was a purpose. A reminder that the greatest roles are not played on screens, but lived in quiet acts of love. As the stars appeared above the orphanage that night, the world outside buzzed with headlines and applause. But inside those walls, it was simple. Children slept peacefully, holding on to dreams that were no longer fragile, but alive. And Keanu Reeves, sitting quietly on the steps with Sister Margaret, whispered into the night, "This is only the beginning."